The road warns you before it hurts. A persistent headlight, a shadow that won't leave you alone, an exit that seems too good to be true. That morning in Wyoming, I ignored the warnings for about 15 minutes. It was almost enough for me not to make it home. I was driving down I-80 east to west, pulling a sealed container of electronics. Clean cargo on paper, heavy in the pockets of any gang. I was the kind of trucker who doesn't look for adventure. Experienced, punctual, and somewhat paranoid about a simple rule. I don't stop out of pity. I don't get out to help. I don't follow anyone anywhere. Shortly after 2 o'clock, I noticed a semi-trailer in my rearview mirror. So far, so normal, except it was too similar to mine. Same shade of blue as the fleet's paint scheme, same stripe design, same cab silhouette. And it was driving too close, practically glued to me, unnecessarily. When I accelerated a little, it accelerated. When I eased off, it eased off. A mirror that breathed. I tested it twice, pretending to exit. A little arrow, a slight reduction in speed, then returning to the lane. It copied everything. It wasn't a coincidence, it was someone saying, "I'm with you." My cell phone had no signal. The radio picked up static and old music. I forced myself to breathe slowly, because panic makes your hand light on the steering wheel, and trucks don't forgive light hands. That's when the pickup truck appeared on the shoulder, hood up, hazard lights flashing. A person in a reflective vest waving a flashlight. The perfect scene to stop and become a hero. But in the middle of that flickering light, I saw a silly detail. The vest was over a thick coat and there wasn't a single trace of steam coming from the mouth. In that kind of cold, anyone would be smoking. It looked staged. I didn't stop. I drove straight past, staying in my lane, and saw the taillight arc angrily as if I'd failed a test. The truck, identical to mine, approached even closer, its high beams flashing on and off, without any hurry. I needed people, lights, and a camera. I remembered a 24-hour gas station on the next exit. It wasn't paradise, but it was a place with wide paved roads and, theoretically, some activity. I went ahead with the idea in my head. Go in, stop near a pump, stay in the booth, and call the police as soon as I got a signal. As the exit sign began to grow larger, the radio clicked on its own. A clear voice, too low to be a trucker's, spoke as if it were right beside me. "You're loaded." My body went cold. I didn't touch any buttons. "Who are you?" I blurted out without thinking. "Exit 184. You will enter." I turned off the radio. Even so, the silence felt as heavy as lead, because the message had already gotten through. I entered the lane at the last second without signaling beforehand, trying to catch the guy by surprise. He entered too. The difference is that now I also saw 2 cars in the opposite lane, driving almost without lights, as if they were marking my movement. Coordinated. The 24-hour gas station was smaller than I remembered. Old pumps, a small shop, a closed restaurant. The lighting was faulty, creating islands of shadow, and the yard was empty. No other trucks, no semi-trailers, nothing. I stopped near the diesel pump, engine running, ready to leave. I didn't get out. I didn't open the door. I just watched. The store door opened, and a tall man in a cap walked out slowly, his hands visible. He pointed to the pump and then to me, as if asking me to fit it better. A normal gesture, the tone of someone who works. I lowered the window by 1 finger. "Are you okay?" I asked. "The bathroom is locked. If you want, I can open it," he said, too quickly for the situation. The sentence was already prepared. In the mirror, the truck identical to mine stopped diagonally behind me, blocking my exit. And to the right of my truck, outside my headlight, I saw movement. 2 shadows walking close to the bodywork, heading straight for the container seals. It wasn't a setup. It was a trap. My throat felt dry. The man in the cap took a step closer. "If you cooperate, nobody gets hurt," he said, as if he were repeating a rehearsed line. I turned on the auxiliary side light and pointed the beam to the right. I caught one of the guys with a large pair of pliers in his hand and a backpack on his back. He stared at me fearlessly, only angry at having been seen. The second one stayed further back, near the rear, ready to run. I couldn't just stand there waiting for the gun to appear. Movement breaks the plan. I released the brake, engaged the gear, and turned the steering wheel to the left, skirting the bombs. The truck behind tried to follow, but was at a bad angle. I heard tires screeching and metal scraping somewhere. The guy with the pliers dropped everything and ran to my door, trying to climb onto the step. I slammed on the gas pedal before he could reach it. He hit the passenger side mirror and fell, rolling on the asphalt. I saw it out of the corner of my eye and kept going without looking again. The truck, identical to mine, came from the left, trying to pull alongside and pin me against the store. I used the weight of my truck as a weapon, gave the steering wheel a slight tap to let it pass, and gently pushed its rear end. That was enough to make it lose its balance and brake. It didn't want to blow up a fuel pump. Nobody does. I found the exit from the yard and the small road that led back to the highway. But before the ramp, 2 cars were blocking the way. One of them was the pickup truck from the shoulder. Hood closed. It had never been broken down. In the middle of the light, a guy raised a handgun and pointed it at me to stop. I didn't stop. With no room to pass, I steered the truck onto the dirt shoulder, half off the asphalt. The trailer pulled, threatening to throw me sideways. I gripped the steering wheel tightly and drove through the dust parallel to the roadblock until I found a spot to turn back further ahead. Something hit the bodywork. I don't know if it was a gunshot or a rock. I just kept going. When I got back on I-80 for a few seconds, I thought I'd escaped. Until the radio started crackling again, even though it was turned off. "Good job," the voice said. "They're still with you." I looked in the rearview mirror and saw distant lights approaching. It wasn't just one vehicle. There were several keeping their distance, waiting for the right spot. I thought about the way station further ahead, sometimes open at night, sometimes. I sped up as much as I could without doing anything crazy and prayed to see an official light on the horizon. When the tall lampposts appeared, I felt a relief that almost made me miss the entrance. The weighbridge was open. There was a state truck, cameras on the lamppost, 2 officers in reflective vests. Real light. I entered the inspection area as an obedient truck and stopped with the brakes squealing. I yelled for help out the window. One of the agents told me to stay in the cab and reached for the radio. The other kept an eye on the highway. The lights behind me dimmed before I turned. The truck, identical to mine, drove straight past, pretending it wasn't my problem. The cars disappeared into the darkness. Inside the station trailer, with water in my hand and a trembling arm, I recounted everything. Mirror truck, empty gas station, broken seal, roadblock. The older agent didn't seem surprised. He only asked one thing that made me swallow hard. "Is your tracker working?" "I didn't touch anything," I said. "Then someone tampered with it before," he replied. "There are gangs cloning signals and copying identification. We've seen this pattern before." He turned a tablet towards me. On the screen, a traffic camera image. A blue truck passing under a gantry, license plate legible. The license plate was mine. My stomach dropped. "This is impossible." The officer zoomed in. In the corner of the bumper, where the fleet number is located, was my number. Only the font was slightly different. A small detail. Too small to see at 120 miles per hour in the rearview mirror, but big enough to tell the truth. "They made a copy of your truck," he said. "And they used your own identity to guide you to the right place." I stared at the screen as if it might change. It didn't. On the road, I always feared guns, knives, ambushes. That night I learned to fear something else. The crime that doesn't confront you. It leads you. It imitates you. It slowly pushes you until you think the decision was yours. They asked for my documents and the bill of lading number. An agent went to the truck and came back with the broken seal in his hand, hanging crookedly. They opened it and closed it again. "They didn't take anything," he said. "They were testing you." "Testing?" I repeated because my head was still in the station. "If they take you out of the cab, the cargo is a bonus. The main target is a driver who is alive and cooperating. You didn't cooperate." The phrase made me nauseous. They didn't just want to steal. They wanted control. Outside, my cell phone picked up a sliver of signal. I called the dispatcher. The call dropped twice. On the third time, he answered and said something that froze me inside. "You shouldn't have gone through that exit." "How do you know which way to go?" I asked. Silence. Then some excuse about a report. I hung up. It wasn't the time to argue, but it was time to mentally note who knew too much. A local patrol car arrived to escort me to a larger yard with real activity. Before I climbed into the cabin, the weighbridge operator whispered to me, Change the radio antenna, install a filter, and change your routine. If they chose you, someone must have told them about you. When I closed the door and started the engine, the familiar sound didn't bring peace. It brought distrust. The police car pulled in front, lights on, but no siren, and I followed. For miles, nothing appeared in the rearview mirror. Even so, each exit sign seemed like a poisoned invitation. In the larger yard, hours later, I finally saw other trucks, people walking around, bad coffee, and the noise of a compressor. Normal. Still, I sat there a while longer before getting off, looking at my mirrors as if they could lie again. When I got out, I touched the fleet number painted on the cabin and thought about the detail of the different font on the copy. Careful, expensive work, done by someone with time and knowledge. And information, on the road, almost always leaks from within. I pulled the radio off its stand and, for the first time in years, considered throwing it away. Instead, I just looked at it and understood that the voice could return at any time, on any channel, with the same certainty. Because they didn't need to chase me forever. They only needed to convince me to take the right exit once. If you're enjoying these chilling stories, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any more terrifying tales to come. Now, get ready for another journey down dark and mysterious roads. I don't usually stop in places I don't recognize on the map, but that night I was running late, with the tachograph reminding me that every minute is expensive, and with a load of automotive parts that had a deadline. I left St. Louis in the late afternoon, and when the rain intensified near Paducah, I already knew I was going to lose time. But losing time on the road isn't just losing money. It's like opening a window for someone. My name is Marcus Hale. I'm 42 years old and have been driving for almost 20 years. I've seen accidents in fog, tires exploding downhill, and drivers falling asleep at the wheel. What happened to me on I-24 in western Kentucky was different because it wasn't fantastical at all. It was human, cold, and calculated. I was driving in a dark lane between exits when I saw a truck stopped on the shoulder, hazard lights on, hood slightly raised, an old white Freightliner. What bothered me was its position. It was right after a curve and near a narrow bridge sign. Stopping there was practically asking to be hit. Even so, there was a man in a reflective vest, his back to me, fiddling with the hood. When my headlights swept across the cab, he raised his hand, asking for help. I hesitated. The first rule of those who live on the road is that we help each other. The second rule is that this help can cost you everything. Still, I thought of my father, a truck driver before me, saying that you don't leave someone stranded on the shoulder. I pulled over further ahead, in a small recess, left the engine running, and got out with my flashlight in hand and pepper spray in my pocket. The guy turned around when I arrived, sparse beard, low cap, eyes too alert for someone with mechanical problems. "Thanks, brother," he said, his voice firm. It all boiled over. "Do you have any water?" "I do," I replied, keeping my distance. "But why did you stop here? This spot is dangerous." "I lost power. It happened right here." He shrugged as if it were inevitable. I pointed the flashlight into his cabin. The curtain was pulled back, but not all the way. I saw a quick, metallic glint, the kind that doesn't belong with a hose and radiator. Maybe a reflection, maybe something else. My body stiffened before my brain could process it. "I'm going to get the water," I said. "Stay here." I went back to my truck and climbed in. I grabbed a jerry can, and before getting out, I looked in the mirrors. That's when I saw a dark sedan stopped behind the Freightliner, without headlights, hidden by the curve. It wasn't there when I pulled over, or I hadn't seen it. I tried my cell phone. 1 bar of signal, no calls were connecting. I turned on the radio to channel 19 and whispered, "Driver on I-24, near the narrow bridge. Anyone in the area?" Just static. The rain hitting the windshield sounded like laughter. I took a breath and went down anyway, because by now I was already involved. And when you enter someone's game, appearing indecisive is the invitation. I walked back with the jerry can. The man in the cap was closer to my truck than before. He smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "Did you bring it?" he asked. I held out the gallon jug without getting closer. "Here, but I'm leaving. You should call for help." The sedan door slammed shut. A second man emerged from the shadows with a handgun in his hand. He was pointing it at the ground, just so I could understand. "Hold on a minute," he said. "No one needs to get hurt." The guy in the cab took another step closer. "We just want to talk. You've got a good load, right?" At that moment, I understood. It wasn't pickpocketing. It was cargo theft. And cargo thieves don't want living witnesses. "I don't want any trouble," I said, trying to control my voice. "Take my money, my cell phone, just let me go." The man with the gun laughed. "Money? You think we stop trucks for money?" A third man emerged from behind the Freightliner, tall, thin, with a hood and a simple mask covering half his face. In his hand, a large wheel wrench. It wasn't for fixing the radiator. It was to end the conversation. "Go up," the cab said without shouting. "Drive to the next old entrance. We'll sort it out there. No police." They positioned themselves like people who had done this before. Gun in my left, tire iron in my right, cap pulled down to grab me if I tried to run. I felt the rain trickle down my neck and a dry anger rise. Not courage, anger at having been predictable. "Come on," the man with the gun repeated, now pointing at me. Slowly. I nodded and took steps toward the cabin, but I went along the bumper side, looking for the least possible angle against the target. I climbed the first step. The cap came up on top of me, ready to push me inside. When my hand touched the doorknob, I slammed the door shut and let it swing back, heavy like a shield. The door hit my cap on my arm. He grunted and the gallon jug fell, the water spilling onto the wet asphalt. In the heat of the moment, I threw myself inside, pulled the door shut, and locked it. Outside, there was a sharp bang, and the glass in the upper corner of the window shattered. Shards flew like ice. I instinctively lowered my head, feeling a cut sting on my scalp. I didn't think about heroism. I thought about getting out alive. I started the truck, engaged the gear with a trembling hand, and released the brake. The engine revved up and the cab shook. Looking in the mirror, I saw the hooded man running toward the front of the truck, trying to block me. I turned the steering wheel just enough that he had to swerve to the side. He fell and rolled into the ditch. I passed the Freightliner and the sedan like a train running through scrap metal. The sedan's headlights lit up in the rearview mirror, and it came up behind me, right behind me, flashing its lights to blind me. I pulled back the rearview mirror shade and focused on the side mirrors. I tried 911 again. Nothing. I went back to the radio. "Cargo robbery on I-24. Dark sedan in pursuit. I need help." This time a voice answered, its static, heavy tone distorted. "What's the point?" "East," I said. Broken window, gunshot. "There's a rest area about 4 miles away. Head over there. I'm going to light everything up." I didn't know who it was, but it was more than I had. The next green sign appeared, and I entered the access to the small rest area, one of those with just a few spotlights and a few parking spaces. I saw 2 parked trucks and a group of people near a coffee machine. Light, movement, witness. I stopped sideways, protecting the cab with the trailer, and got out shouting, "Call the police now." When the patrol arrived, I had already repeated the story 3 times, trying not to miss any details. They went to the shoulder of the road and returned with the same frustration I felt. Abandoned truck, fake license plate, nothing to arrest anyone at that moment. One of the policemen looked at me and said that type of gang changes routes like they change clothes, always looking for tired drivers and easy to resell cargo. I stood there listening to the sound of tires on the highway and thinking about the decision I made when I saw the raised hand on the bend. The cruelest part wasn't the gunshot. It was realizing that the cry for help had been designed to touch exactly what the road creates in you, the habit of being useful and the fear of being the next one in need. And I knew, with a painful clarity, that I would have stopped again if I hadn't seen that sedan with its lights off. In the rest area, I couldn't stop looking at the entrance, waiting for the sedan to return. My hand trembled as I tried to drink water. An older truck driver, Calvin, made me sit under the spotlight as if the light could keep me whole. "Do you know these guys?" he asked. "No," I replied. "But they know the road." He looked at the torn plastic on my window and the blood in my hair. "Cargo theft," he said, as a diagnosis. "The bait is a broken-down truck. Then comes the dead car. You were lucky." The sirens finally blared, and blue lights illuminated the wet parking lot. The police officer who got out of the first patrol car looked weary and worn. He wrote down my name and made me repeat everything. When I finished, came the questions I hated, because I didn't have a good answer. License plate, car make, facial details, tattoos, anything. I remembered the fear vividly and the details with shame. "You understand they wanted to get you off the highway," the officer said. "If you go down that road, you'll disappear. You did the right thing by locking up and speeding up." I wanted to say that I hadn't done it right, that I had only survived for seconds, but I swallowed it. The rain lessened, and for a moment I believed it was over, until I saw, far from the spotlight, a car parked in the shade outside the main entrance. A sedan. I couldn't see the color. I could only sense its presence. The parking attendant followed my gaze and pointed his flashlight. The light hit the windshield and I saw a silhouette move in the driver's seat. "Stay behind your truck," he ordered. I obeyed. The policeman yelled at the car, but the sedan sped off and disappeared before entering the illuminated area. It wasn't a chase, it was a warning. That second left me feeling worse than the gunshot because it showed they were still nearby, choosing the right moment. When the other patrol car returned from the shoulder of the road saying that the Freightliner had been abandoned and that there was no one there, I felt a void. Nothing caught, nothing resolved. Just the understanding that this was routine for them. The next morning, I drove with the plastic rattling on the window and a new paranoia clinging to the back of my neck. Every car that went too fast seemed like a threat. Every stopped truck seemed like bait. And yet I kept going. Because stopping doesn't erase what happened. Once you step out of the cabin in the dark and find a weapon, the dark is never just dark again. I delivered the cargo late in the afternoon, behind schedule, but intact. The receiving supervisor complained about the time without even looking at the tape on my window. I didn't argue. I signed, went back to the cab, and stood there for a minute with my hands on the steering wheel, breathing slowly, trying to convince my body that it wasn't dawn anymore. Since then, whenever I see someone gesturing with their hand on the side of the road, I don't stop. I radio them, I drive to a place with lights and a camera, and I call the patrol when possible. It's not coldness, it's survival. That night I learned a simple thing. Crime doesn't need ghosts. It only needs you getting out of the booth in the dark. I was on the eastern stretch of I-90, cutting through South Dakota, pulling a 53-foot dry van loaded with cargo toward Sioux Falls. It was one of those nights when the world disappears and all that's left is the asphalt. My name is Marcus Hale. I'm in my 40s, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that real danger doesn't come with suspenseful music. It comes with small details, things out of place, things that don't fit together, and that you only understand when it's too late. I had stopped to refuel at a 24-hour gas station near Murdo, a typical place, brightly lit, smelling of diesel and burnt coffee. I saw two guys near the pumps, low-profile caps, thick jackets, no logo. I didn't think much of it. Truckers dress like that. I paid, grabbed a prepackaged sandwich, and went back to the truck. When I turned on the phone, I noticed a dark sedan parked across the street, somewhat apart, with no one in sight. The interior lights were off. That's fine. Except it wasn't there when I arrived. I have a habit of observing things, not because I'm paranoid, but because I've seen cargo disappear for less. I left the gas station and continued on. After about 10 minutes, I saw headlights behind me, keeping a distance, not overtaking. Up to that point, normal. I-90 at night is like that. One or two cars, some trucks, and silence. But those headlights stayed in the same spot, as if the driver didn't want to get too close or fall behind. I moved to the right lane, leaving the left lane free. The car didn't pass. I slowed down a little. He did too. I accelerated. He accelerated. This kind of mirror is what makes your stomach churn. When I saw the sign indicating a secondary access to a rest area a few kilometers away, I thought about stopping. The rule is simple. If you think you're being followed, don't give away your destination. Continue until you find a place with movement, light, and people. But my sense of direction was tight, and I needed 15 minutes to adjust my head. I was just going to go in, take a walk if it was empty, and leave. The rest area was small, almost without lighting. A concrete bathroom, 2 picnic tables, and a parking lot with faded markings. There was only an old truck parked at the back, cab facing the exit, curtains drawn. I entered slowly, lights low, and walked around. I was about to leave when I saw the sedan entering as well, as if by coincidence. It wasn't. I didn't stop. I kept the truck rolling, made the turn, and went back to the exit. The car stopped for a second and then accelerated, trying to catch up with me. If he wanted to hold me there, it was because there was someone else. I got back on the highway and continued on. The sedan came up behind me, now closer. Suddenly it swerved to the left and pulled alongside my trailer. I glanced sideways, trying to see the driver. Tinted windows. The passenger window rolled down just a hand's breadth, enough for me to see a metallic glint, like the reflection of something pointed at me. Then came the first attempt. The sedan moved forward and braked in front of me, trying to force me to slow down. I lifted my foot off the gas, kept my distance. He braked again, harder. I'd seen this before in road videos, a trick to force the truck driver to crash and take the blame, or to stop and get robbed. I tried calling the police, but the signal there was unstable. It dropped. The sedan pulled out from in front and then backed up. A few minutes later, I saw a white pickup truck emerge from an access road, enter the highway, and tailgate me. No visible front license plate. Tinted windows. The pickup truck clung to me, so close I could see the glare of its headlights reflecting off my trailer door. 2 vehicles. Now it made sense. One pushes, the other blocks. One distracts, the other attacks. I was over an hour from a larger city. The next proper exit led to a small town called Kadoka. I decided my goal was simple: reach the busiest gas station I could, even if it meant exceeding my time limit. If I stopped in the dark, I'd be in the news. The pickup truck started making strange movements as if the driver were trying to align himself in my blind spot. I kept both hands steady, breathing heavily. The cabin seemed smaller, stuffy, and I realized how heavy the silence is when you're alone. Then, as if they had planned it, the sedan swerved to the left and came parallel to my cabin, on the driver's side. The pickup truck stayed behind, right behind me. I was trapped by metal and intent. That's when I saw the flashlight. A quick beam from the pickup truck, illuminating the side of my trailer, searching for the seal, searching for the number, searching for any access point. They didn't want to rob me on the road. They wanted to know exactly what I was carrying. I knew my trailer had seals, but that doesn't stop someone from cutting the side or breaking the latch if they have the time. And time is what they try to buy by forcing you to stop. The next long curve came, and with it a small chance. I used the truck's weight to hold the line and at the same time gave a slight variation in speed, just enough for the sedan to lose its parallel parking spot. It swayed. The driver corrected, but I gained 2 seconds of vision in the mirror and saw something that chilled me. The passenger's arm, with a gun, pointed at my window. I instinctively lowered my head, as if that would help. It didn't. Bullets go through glass. But the gesture is human. The mind tries to protect itself in any way possible. I didn't hear a gunshot. What I heard next was the dry crack of something hitting my mirror, followed by a tremor. A stone, an object, anything. My mirror vibrated and I lost part of the vision on my left side. They wanted to blind me. I accelerated. The engine responded with that deep rumble. I kept the truck within the safe limits, without overdoing it. One mistake on my part, and I would have rolled over. I needed to stay alive and maintain control. Kadoka's sign finally appeared, small and bright, like a fake relief. Exit 150. I signaled early. I wanted to seem normal, not desperate. I wanted them to think I was going somewhere where they could act calmly. As soon as I entered the access road, I saw what gave me hope. The lights of a large gas station, one of those with parking for trucks and a restaurant. There were at least 10 trucks parked there. People walking around. Truck drivers in coats, some chatting near the pumps. Ordinary life, the kind that criminals hate, because witnesses are poison. I pulled straight into the best lit area near the cameras and honked briefly twice. Not out of anger, actually. I looked in the broken rearview mirror and saw the sedan slowing down, as if deciding whether or not to pull in. The white pickup truck made a wide maneuver, as if it were just another vehicle looking for a parking spot. I got out of the truck with the door locked from the inside, opening it just enough to get out and close it. I had a pocket knife, but a pocket knife isn't a weapon. I also didn't want to look like a cowboy. I wanted to look like a guy who needed help. I walked quickly to the entrance of the gas station and went straight to the counter. I told the attendant I was being followed and asked him to call the police. He looked at me with a face that said he'd heard stories before, but this time he believed me. Maybe because of my expression. Maybe because of the trembling in my hand. As he dialed, I turned and saw through the window the sedan driving slowly past without stopping. The pickup truck, on the other hand, pulled into the yard and parked at the back, near a row of trailers. 2 men got out, walking as if they were in no hurry. One of them looked at my truck. Not at the pumps, not at the store. At my truck. I stood there, inside, trying to memorize details. Height, jackets, the way they walked. One had a light beard and a baseball cap with a curved brim. The other wore a dark sweatshirt and had his hands in his pockets as if he were hiding something. They walked between the trailers like predators in a corral. They stopped beside my trailer, looked at the seal, and one of them crouched down near the latch. I couldn't see his hand, but I saw the movement of his shoulder as if trying to force something. I thought about screaming. I thought about running outside. But I knew that's what they wanted. To take me away from the protection, to put me in the darkness of the parking lot. That's when a large truck driver, wearing a reflective jacket, came out of the restaurant with a cup of coffee and walked towards them. He didn't look like a hero. He just looked like someone who doesn't like people messing with what isn't theirs. He pointed at the trailer, said something, and the 2 men backed away, feigning confusion. The attendant informed me that the police were on their way. I felt a wave of relief, but it came mixed with a new fear. What if they didn't leave? What if they waited for me to come out? Minutes later, I saw red and blue lights approaching down the road. A police car pulled into the yard. Then another. The 2 men had already disappeared among the trucks. The white pickup truck was gone too. I didn't even see it leave. The police came in. I explained everything, showed them the broken mirror, described the vehicles. They asked if I had noticed the license plate. I hadn't. That annoyed me. I had observed so much, and yet the most important detail was missing. They went out to look at my trailer. The seal was intact, but the lock had recent marks, as if someone had tried to insert some kind of tool. One of the police officers told me that it looked like an attempted cargo theft, perhaps a group that does a test first to see if the driver gives in. If the driver stops in the wrong place, they take it. I stayed at the post until dawn. I didn't really sleep. I only dozed off with my mind racing, waiting for the sound of footsteps, the creaking of a door, anything. The wind whipped against the trailer, and I woke up every time. When the sun finally illuminated the plain, I returned to the highway with the feeling that the night had stolen something I couldn't name. It wasn't just peace. It was confidence in normalcy. I continued the journey. I delivered the cargo. I wrote the report for the company. I replaced the mirror. But what stuck with me was the detail I didn't tell anyone that day, because it seemed too absurd. As I was leaving the gas station, already entering the highway and the patrol cars were still in the yard, I looked in the right side mirror and saw the dark sedan parked on the other side of the road, on the shoulder, far from the lights, like a motionless shadow. And I saw the glow of a cell phone raised, pointed at me, as if someone were recording. It wasn't a threat of a weapon. It was something else. It was a record. It was confirmation. I understood then that I hadn't been chosen at random. They had marked me at the checkpoint in Murdo, tested my reaction in the rest area, and continued with the plan until they realized I was going to look for people, lights, a camera, and the police. They gave up, but they didn't leave defeated. They left informed. Since then, I've followed a rule that isn't in any manual. When something seems out of place, I don't try to be brave. I try to be predictable to those who can help me and impossible to stop. Because on the road, crime doesn't always have to win. It only has to win once.